And welcome to the Moriah Nightly News on a Friday evening, July 10th, 2026. From the nation to Moriah, here are tonight's top stories. The top story on the national stage here in the United States is an assassination attempt that was foiled by Israeli intelligence. The most recent assassination attempt against the president originated in Iran and was discovered by Israeli intelligence, and photos surfaced this afternoon across various news outlets, social media across the board. And Trump had alluded to comments at the NATO summit this week in Turkey, according to a newsletter put out by the Wall Street Journal. There has been, of course, numerous coverage, including on NBC, on this most recent and ongoing development. However, I am going to table some of this discussion because of the amount that we have to cover here locally tonight. I will, however, note that this is significant for the U.S. Israel relationship. And I highlight that because it is a clear indication of the benefits of that relationship that a threat to the president's life was discovered not by American intelligence, but by Israeli intelligence through the intelligence sharing agreement. So, for all of the anti Semites out there that tend to lean Democrat or left leaning, that is a clear rebuke of that agenda. And not only for them, but I would also add it to the gaffes that the vice president has tended to make in recent weeks. However, I will table most of that discussion again because of the amount of information that I have to cover here on the local front that has come in because of the events of last evening. Many or most of you are aware that last night was the monthly town board meeting in Ticonderoga, last night at 6 p.m. in the Ticonderoga Community Building. The footage that we have, I did not get loaded into the software here due to the time constraints with planning and getting things ready to go here on the air tonight with the 9 to 5 schedule and all of that going on. But in any case, here is the rundown of what took place. A packed house in the basement of the community building. A packed house in terms of, to just tell you that the room was filled more so than a normal board meeting. Most town board meetings here in our region are sparsely attended. Just as a comparison or note of comparison, the meeting that I went to in Moriah last month was not as well attended, and minimal numbers by comparison, just to give a side note to draw the numbers there. Emotions were very high, tangible in the room as residents sought answers from local leadership. The public brought loads of information to Mr. O'Brien, the Ticonderoga town supervisor, Jim O'Brien, and the rest of the Ticonderoga town council that was on hand, as well as the town clerk and town attorney, that were all present representing town leadership. But many residents voiced what they have discovered in terms of their own research and findings through FOIL requests, and not just FOIL requests, but research through various, whether that's sources online or things like that. Joe Mahalik, resident Joe Mahalik, mentioned the pilot agreements, figures on the pilot agreement in the beginning of the meeting, and others spoke as well, just to give some idea of what information was presented. And of note, Jim O'Brien did say that he welcomed the research that people were doing as input into the process for the public committee. Now, that is interesting and noteworthy because one of the conclusions of public discussion or public information was that the public committee is slated for its first meeting on July 15th at 6 p.m. And for clarification, this is that special BESS research committee that has been assembled by Ticonderoga leadership to research all aspects of BESS. If you recall, the town of Ticonderoga has assembled this committee to study every aspect from the medical to the scientific to the government and political, all of those various aspects under this committee to research and present this information to the public at these various public meetings and culminating at the end of this 6-month period, as best as myself and my small team can understand it, to present this information to the public at a final public hearing to be held at the Ticonderoga High School. That is because I say, as best as I understand it, because there was a lot of I don't knows, and I can't answer that from town leadership, as I mentioned, as well as the allusion that's spelled with an A, allusion, to a potential lawsuit or litigation that the town of Ticonderoga would have to enter into down the road with New York State, whether that is NYSERDA, whether that is the Office of Renewable Energy Siting. That was unclear. And as citizens, residents asked for clarification, that clarification was shot down and dismissed. That is unclear, and that is why I indicate that that information I just presented on that committee is the best I can tell you. So in any case, the future of this project or where this is headed is to this public forum on July 15th at 6 p.m. There was, however, no location given on the agenda notes for where that meeting will be held. The traditional location is the community building. I would suggest or float the possibility that the school would be considered given the amount of public interest. However, that at this time was not made clear. In any case, there will be obviously a lot more to come as the days roll on and more information becomes available as we move forward, as it unfolds by the day, it seems. The full footage of the meeting right now is available again via our Ticonderoga team member, Lori Messing. However, I will work tomorrow to get that footage here, as I do have it. It's just a matter of I have not had time again today with time constraints, and I appreciate your patience between a 9 to 5 employment and working here. It is difficult, but again, I do appreciate uh, your understanding with a small operation as we are here. In any case, it was also a very busy night, not only for what happened in Ticonderoga, but there was also a town board meeting in Crown Point, as mentioned, that I had announced via our Facebook page to note the meeting. And I was not aware that the town of Moriah held an additional board meeting last night as well. Their meeting is, however, already in its full form on Facebook. You can view that anytime you wish on the town of Moriah's Facebook page. I, for one, appreciate that because I don't have to go looking for the footage. Nobody, for that matter, has to go looking for the footage. Any concerned citizen can watch the footage if they want it. And as far as transparency, honesty, integrity in our local government, that is important and a step in the right direction there. The Crown Point meeting I have not followed up on yet, just because of, again, more for time constraints. And I do want to note, because I saw a comment on social media asking about more public announcement, as many municipalities either perhaps make it unclear for public. Um, there, I am attempting to gather more information on when the meetings actually are, with more of a general notice, so that it would be more with to give you our loyal viewers, as we grow here, more time to plan your schedules if you wish to be there in the days ahead. That is something that I have been again, it's been on the back of my mind and attempting to do, but with so many irons in the fire, it's not always easy. So I am working on somewhat of a master schedule, if you will, to plan for when meetings are, not just in Ticonderoga, but for the area, to include not only town board meetings on that list, but school board meetings as well, because it is important for engagement in what our children are being taught as well. In any case, moving right along, also down in Ticonderoga, there was a developing story this evening coming to me via some of my news cables, if you will, down there, who are happy to send me information. There were reports of a kitchen fire down at McDonald's today in Ticonderoga. That is a developing story that I do not have much more information than that, other than to say it did happen, and that it looks like it was in the kitchen down there, from what I could piece together in time to get it out to you here. Again, that was just a brief note in terms of the planning for this broadcast. It is a developing story that we will have more on Monday. So definitely be able to find out more over the weekend. And also, in terms of meetings, which again, my notes were a little scrambled there. I apologize for that. The last week, we had aired footage from one of the meetings in Ticonderoga, which was a discussion about the proposal to build a new fire station down there. And that is a matter of significant public concern. There is a meeting of the Planning and Zoning Board on August 6th at 6 p.m., and that would be in the community building. Although again, the notice from the town did not specify, but because the town uses that, that's a pretty safe guess there. This is significant because the notice called this a site because of site plan review for the new Ticonderoga Fire Department, a firehouse construction that was the subject of that presentation given at that meeting a week or so ago. I note that because of its public importance to the community down there, and more information will be available on that as we move forward here at the Moriah channel and the Moriah Nightly News. The concern there is well known, but it was not clear fully because of the quality of the audio that came in from that video. Exactly how that played out, 100%. So I don't want to say more than that and give you the wrong information, but I just want to make you aware so that if you are planning ahead in your schedule, you can attend those meetings. With all of that being said, this is all I got. With all of that being said, I am going to shift gears tonight and do something that I have not done in the history of this broadcast. And that is to issue a public safety announcement. As I have not done that. But if you recall, in the month of June, I had done that tribute to the World War II veterans and heroes of the Second World War. Last week, I ran that reflection piece on the America 250 celebration and where we were as a nation. But tonight, I'm going to run a public service announcement on the importance of fostering healthy relationships and community events. They're pretty much tied together there. But really, fostering good relationships. The Harvard Graduate School of Education did a study that was released in around 2023 on the causes of the epidemic of loneliness in the United States. They, of course, are not the only source, and there are multiple studies on not only the mental health side effects, but the physiological side effects of loneliness over your lifespan. But this is what the Harvard Graduate School of Education found over a 4-year study that was done and came out post-COVID. 21% of adults in the general population reported feelings of loneliness. Breaking that down across different age groups, in the 30 to 44-year-old demographic was the highest percentage of adults. Around 29% reported frequently or always feeling lonely. In the 18 to 24% age group, 18 to 24, those are your young adults just coming out of graduating high school in college, 24% reported feeling lonely. Interestingly enough, as you got older and went into your 45 to 64-year-old group, 20% felt lonely. And then in your 65 plus group, 10% felt lonely. This study from the Harvard Graduate School of Education did not indicate why that was the case. I'm not sure if that would be more intensive care or more would you call it, more personal care as you age, say in a nursing home, if that plays a factor in your emotional health, if that would be a possibility there. Um, I am not sure. They did not say, but that is I'm not sure. That's a guess on my end. So as far as income, they found that the loneliest group were more or less those with the least amount of money. Those that made less than $30,000 a year were the loneliest, with 29% in that category reporting those feelings of being frequently or always lonely. 19% in those in the 50 to 100,000, making it 50 to $100,000 per year in that bracket, and then 18% in the $100,000 plus. Not a significant drop, but from not a significant drop from the middle class group, but more on the lower end of the income spectrum. As far as what it what does loneliness feel like? This is what these people reported that it felt like. One said that it felt like being surrounded by other people, quote, who are only present in my life because I am useful to them. They also expressed an existential loneliness, a fundamental sense of disconnection from others or the world. These were in quotes, which to me means people wrote these in on these or in these studies, reports, whatever, however they got this data. Of those lonely, 65% said they felt fundamentally separate or disconnected from others in the world. 57% said they were unable to share their true selves with others. So staggering information. Of that, the mental health effects, 81% of these adults who were lonely struggled with depression or anxiety, compared to 29% in the non-lonely population. So there is a significant drop there. The causes of loneliness, what they believe the causes were, these are what these people who pulled in on this for lonely believe the causes were. 73% said it was due to technology. And interestingly, for us using technology here, uh, insufficient time with family was 66%. 62% said it was because they were because of being overworked, tired, or too busy. 60% said it was because of a mental health challenge that limited or hindered relationships, or harmed relationships. 58% said they were said it was because of living in a society that is too individualistic, focused on self, perhaps maybe a better way to put that, or a simpler way. And the last one, interestingly, 50% said it was because there was no religious or spiritual, would have a pop up right then. 50% said there was no religious or spiritual life, or too focused on our own feelings instead of others, and the nature of work and things like that. So these are the interesting facts of loneliness. Interestingly, to see that the religious feeling made it in there for what I have already shared there, and strategies mentioned for things like reaching out to people, learning to be more self compassionate, loving yourself, forgiving others, and the Harvard Graduate School seem to agree with what those the subjective coping strategies were. Now, I mentioned that because for all of the things that I have shared here tonight and in the past about both the political side of things here in our communities, the need for strong religious, spiritual, and moral foundations in our communities and in our world. There is also the sense and the need for community, purpose, and good, strong relationships. And those are often just having good, healthy friends. And you don't need to have too many. And most of the time, people don't have many. And quality over quantity is never a bad thing. And as much as maybe many of us here in this area think of communion as being a church thing of going up in a line and receiving a wafer at church and drinking wine, which is important, and I would not take away from that by any means, because Jesus says to do that, that there are other ways as well that are equally as important for our quality of life in human experience. Sharing meals, whether that's fellowship meals at church, going to breakfast with someone, making a meal for someone, preparing a meal, going for coffee, going for a walk. I could think of many examples of someone of doing that, even going to the local tavern or something sociable like that. Why do I say tavern and not bar? Because a bar has a reputation for being associated with just getting plastered. And a tavern has historically been associated with more social and cultural and community events like dinners and things like that. And that is what I end on here tonight, to say that as we end the news week here and go into the weekend for many of us, to take some time for rest and family, and yes, those friends that we have. And if you don't have them, make them, because you can find them if you look far enough. And I assure you, you will not have to look hard enough. And the easiest way is to be one. And with that, I end this public service announcement and this episode or edition of the Moriah Nightly News. And I hope that I will see you back here on Monday. So have a good weekend, and may God bless you and keep you. And good night.